Why don't you just disappear? My dad's voice cracked through the air like a whip. I froze mid-sentence, the words I'd been holding slipping away. From across the table, my younger sister Casey leaned back in her chair, a smirk tugging at her lips. Yeah, we'd be better off without you, she added, almost casually, like she was commenting on the weather. Something inside me went very, very still. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just stood, walked to the hall closet, grabbed my coat, and stepped out into the cold night. No one followed. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds of my friend Maya's spare bedroom. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, 13 missed calls. 8 from Dad. 5 from Casey. I stared at the screen, my stomach tight. Whatever they wanted, it wasn't going to be simple, and I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I stayed curled up on the couch in Maya's apartment, my coat still on, staring at the muted TV until the infomercial hosts blurred into static. Maya didn't press me for details. She's known me long enough to tell when I'm not ready. She just left a blanket and a glass of water within reach, and went to bed. I thought about the past 3 years, how everything had slowly shifted after Mom died. Back then, it was just Dad, Casey, and me, trying to figure out how to breathe again. We were a team. We ate dinner together, watched movies on Friday nights, argued about chores and homework like normal families do. But things started changing about a year ago, when Dad started seeing Elaine. She was warm and charming in front of strangers, but with me, there was this thin layer of performance. Like she was waiting for me to say the wrong thing so she could flash that tight-lipped smile and file it away for later. Casey adored her instantly, and Dad, well, he seemed lighter around her, in a way that made me feel heavier. The drift started subtly. My voice in family conversations became background noise. Little jabs from Casey about my bad mood, my control freak tendencies went unchecked by Dad. Elaine would step in sometimes, pretending to smooth things over, but it always left me feeling like the difficult one. I tried to keep my head down. I poured myself into my classes, my part-time job at the bookstore, my college applications. But somehow, that only made things worse. Casey accused me of thinking I'm better than everyone, and Dad started siding with her more often than not. Then came last night. Dinner was awkward from the start. Casey was texting under the table, thumbs moving like she was in a speed typing contest. I reminded her about our no phones at dinner rule one Dad himself had set years ago. She rolled her eyes and kept tapping. Casey, I said, my voice firmer this time. Put it away. Before she could answer, Dad's fork clinked against his plate. Luna, you're not her mother. Let it go. That should have been the end of it. But Casey, smelling victory, decided to push. Why don't you just disappear? She said, grinning like it was a joke only she got. I barely had time to process before Dad snapped. Yeah, maybe we would be better off without you. It wasn't the words alone, it was the look in his eyes. Cold, final, so I left. Now, in the morning light, those 13 missed calls feel like landmines waiting to explode. My thumb hovers over the voicemail icon, but I can't press it. Not yet. Because deep down, I know last night wasn't the start of anything. It was the ending I'd been trying not to see. If I'm being honest, the fight didn't come out of nowhere. The whole week had been a slow boil. It started last Monday, when Dad called a family meeting in the living room. Elaine was there too, perched on the arm of his chair like she'd earned the right. The topic? Casey's slipping grades. Her math teacher had emailed home about missing assignments, but instead of facing it, Casey rolled her eyes and blamed the teacher for being out to get her. I offered to help just a couple hours after school, go over the homework together. Casey used to take me up on that all the time. But this time, she crossed her arms and shot back. Stop pretending you care. You're just looking for another reason to boss me around. Dad didn't say a word. Elaine sipped her tea. I remember feeling the shift, like I'd just been shoved off some invisible cliff and left hanging. By Wednesday, things had gotten worse. I came home to find dirty dishes piled in the sink. Casey sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. I asked her to rinse the plates so I could load the dishwasher, and she made a big show of banging them around like I'd just asked her to scrub the entire kitchen floor with a toothbrush. Dad walked in halfway through and immediately told me to ease up on her. She'd had a hard day. It was such a small thing, but in that moment, I realized I'd stopped expecting him to have my back. Friday, Elaine suggested a fun family dinner to clear the air. She made reservations at a place downtown Dad liked. I thought maybe this could be a reset. Maybe we could all just breathe. But Casey was already tapping away on her phone when we sat down, thumbs flying like she was live tweeting the entire meal. I tried to ignore it, but when the appetizers came and she still hadn't looked up, I leaned in. "Casey, put your phone away," I said, keeping my tone even. She didn't look up. "I'm in the middle of something. You can finish it later," I replied, softer this time. That's when Dad's voice cut through. "Luna, she's not a child. Let her be." I could have dropped it. I should have dropped it. But the week had been too long, and the resentment too heavy. "You set this rule, Dad. No phones at dinner, remember?" Casey smirked like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. "Why don't you just disappear?" The words didn't sting right away. They hung in the air like smoke, curling into my lungs. Before I could respond, Dad delivered the gut punch. "Yeah, maybe we would be better off without you." The table went silent except for the hum of the restaurant. Elaine glanced between us like she was watching a tennis match. My hands felt too heavy to lift my fork. So I didn't. I slid back my chair, stood up, and left. No shouting, no scene, just the dull thud of my boots on the tile as I walked out into the cold night. I didn't know where I was going. Only that I couldn't go home. Not after that. The morning light in Maya's apartment was softer than the one at home. There, it always seemed too sharp, bouncing off the white walls and making every flaw stand out. Here, it filtered through gauzy curtains, almost enough to make me forget the night before. Almost. The 13 missed calls still sat on my phone like a row of warning lights. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I didn't open the texts. Instead, I made coffee, thanked Maya for letting me crash, and told her I needed to swing by the house to grab a few things. She offered to come with me. I told her no. I wanted to face it alone. The drive felt shorter than usual, though my stomach knotted tighter with every street I passed. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed Dad's truck was gone, but Elaine's silver sedan sat in its usual spot. The first thing I saw when I stepped inside was the living room wall. It used to be cluttered with framed photos, holidays, school events, the three of us smiling like we had nothing but time ahead. My graduation picture was gone. The family trip to Colorado? Still there, but my body had been neatly cut out, leaving an awkward gap between Dad and Casey. I moved closer, scanning frame after frame. Every single photo with me in it had been altered or removed entirely. Even the little 4x6 from the county fair, the one Casey begged me to print because we'd won matching stuffed bears. The coffee in my hand went cold. "What the hell?" I whispered, more to the empty room than anyone else. That's when Elaine appeared in the doorway, holding a laundry basket. She froze for a fraction of a second before plastering on a smile. "Luna, you're home." "Not for long," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Where are the photos?" Her smile tightened. "Your dad thought it might be best, given how tense things have been." "Best for who?" I shot back. Before she could answer, a faint vibration came from the hallway, my old bedroom. I followed the sound and found my desk drawer half open. My jewelry box tipped over. A couple of my mother's rings were missing. I spun around. "Elaine, where are my things?" She shifted the basket to her other hip. "You'll have to ask your father." Then, as if on cue, her phone buzzed. "Excuse me, I have to take this." She disappeared down the hall, her voice dropping to a whisper. I stood there, scanning the room like it might give me answers. That's when my phone chimed with a new message from Mrs. Dempsey next door. "Saw a man at your place last night after you left. Tall, dark jacket. Thought it was your uncle?" Uncle? I didn't have an uncle. At least, not one who visited. A cold feeling crawled up my spine. I looked at the empty photo frames, the missing jewelry, and the unanswered calls. Something was happening, and I had a sick feeling I was already too late to stop it. When I left the house, the air felt heavier, like the sky knew something I didn't. I drove aimlessly for a while, ending up in the parking lot of the bookstore where I worked weekends. I didn't go inside. I just sat there, scrolling aimlessly through my phone until Maya's name lit up the screen. "You're not gonna like this," she said without even saying hello. "I just ran into someone who says he's your uncle." "My... what?" "Steve," she continued. "Tall, dark jacket, salt and pepper hair. He said he hasn't seen you in years." The name hit me like a stone dropped in water, sending ripples through old, half-buried memories. Steve was my dad's younger brother, or used to be. I was a kid when he vanished from our lives, but I still remembered the fights, the whispered arguments about the money, and how could you do this to family. Mom never spoke his name after that. "What did he want?" I asked carefully. "He was asking if you still lived at home. Said he had a business opportunity for your dad and Casey. Kept talking about getting the whole family involved." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Did you tell him anything?" "Of course not," she said. "But Luna, be careful. There's something about him I don't like." After we hung up, I typed his name into my phone. It didn't take long to find him, Steve Reynolds, in a grainy local news article from 5 years ago. Man accused of defrauding relatives in investment scheme. The piece was short, but the damage was clear. He'd taken tens of thousands from cousins and in-laws, promising to double their money in a new venture. The case had been settled out of court. So why was he back now? And why was he suddenly so interested in Casey? By the time I got back to Maya's, she had 2 mugs of tea waiting and a laptop open. "I did a little digging," she said, swiveling it toward me. "A social media page, recently updated, plastered with motivational quotes about family wealth and trusting your blood. In the comments, I spotted a familiar profile picture, Casey. My chest tightened. She'd liked half his posts in the last month. "Maya," I said slowly, "Mrs. Dempsey texted me this morning. She saw a man at the house last night after I left. I think it was Steve. That's not good." "Yeah." I swallowed hard. If he's targeting Casey, he's not just after money. He's after Dad's trust. And once he has that, I didn't need to finish the sentence. We sat in silence for a minute, the weight of it settling over us. Then my phone buzzed a new text from Dad. "We're having dinner with Steve tomorrow night. I think it's time you bury the hatchet." Bury the hatchet. The phrase made my stomach twist. This wasn't about making peace. This was about pulling me into whatever he was selling. I typed back one word: maybe. Then I tossed the phone on the couch and looked at Maya. "If I'm going to that dinner," I said, "I need to know exactly what he's up to before I walk through that door." Her eyes narrowed in a way that meant trouble for someone else. "Then we've got work to do." I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Steve's face, half smiling, half measuring, like he was calculating exactly how much I was worth to him. By morning, Maya had transformed her dining table into a war room. Her laptop sat in the middle, surrounded by my notepad, a pile of old photo albums, and 2 mugs of coffee strong enough to dissolve steel. "Here's what I found," she said, sliding the laptop toward me. First was a list of business registrations under Steve Reynolds' name, 7 in total, all dissolved or flagged for suspicious activity. Auto detailing, real estate flipping, luxury vacation rentals, each one shut down within 2 years. Then there were the lawsuits. Some had been dismissed, others ended in quiet settlements. But one stood out: a civil suit from a family in Ohio accusing Steve of taking their daughter's college fund for a surefire startup. I remembered something Elaine had said yesterday. Dad thought it was best to take down my photos because of how tense things had been. But what if that wasn't the real reason? What if Steve had asked for it, to erase me from the picture, literally, so he could make the family look whole without me? I pulled up Casey's Instagram. Her latest story was a picture of college brochures spread across her desk with the caption, "Big changes ahead." "Looks like he's selling her the dream," I muttered. Maya leaned over. "Or selling her future for cash." I started drafting a list. Find out where Steve's living now. Confirm whether he's actually launching anything or just recycling his old scams. Check if he's approached anyone else in town. We split up the work. Maya scoured property records and business filings. I called a friend from high school who worked at a local bank. By noon, we had pieces of the puzzle. Steve had rented a small office downtown, barely furnished. Just a desk, a fake plant, and a laptop. He'd also opened an account under the name Family Futures LLC 2 weeks ago. But the biggest break came from an unexpected source, Mrs. Dempsey again. She texted me a blurry photo she'd taken from her kitchen window the night I left. It showed Steve, Dad, and Casey at our dining table. Steve had a stack of papers in front of him, and Casey was holding a pen. "He's getting her to sign something," I said, my stomach turning. That's when I knew this wasn't just about Dad's trust, it was about Casey's money. Her college savings were in a joint account with Dad. If she signed anything giving Steve permission to manage it, it would be gone before she even applied to schools. I looked at Maya. "We need proof before tomorrow night. Something concrete enough to blow this wide open." She smirked. "Then I hope you brought your comfortable shoes because we're going downtown." That afternoon, we parked across from Steve's so-called office. Through the dusty blinds, we could see him pacing on the phone, gesturing like he was sealing some massive deal. At one point, he opened a drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder. Even from here, I recognized the color of the dividers. Dad used the same kind for our household documents. We snapped photos, we recorded video. And as the sun dipped below the buildings, I realized something I hadn't let myself admit until now. Tomorrow night wasn't going to be a family dinner. It was going to be a war. The next evening, I dressed carefully. Not for style, but for function: dark jeans, a fitted jacket with deep pockets for my phone, and a small voice recorder Maya insisted I bring. "You want him on tape?" she'd said. "Make it so clean the cops don't even have to try." Dad had texted the address, a family-style Italian place just outside town. When I pulled up, I spotted his truck and next to it, a shiny black SUV I didn't recognize. Steve's, no doubt. Inside, the smell of garlic and wine was thick enough to choke on. Dad waved me over from a round table in the back. Steve was already there, leaning back in his chair like he owned the place. Casey sat between them, flipping through a glossy folder that I suspected contained more than just menu specials. "Luna," Steve said, flashing that predator's grin. "Glad you could join us. I've been telling your dad it's time we all move past old grudges." I slipped into my seat, meeting his gaze without blinking. "I'm here to listen." Dad's expression softened, like my presence alone meant progress. Casey looked relieved, which made me angrier because relief meant she still trusted him. The waitress came, took drink orders, and left us in the hum of clinking glasses and murmured conversations. That's when Steve leaned forward. "I've got something big, something that could set this family up for life. It's called Family Futures LLC. We're talking high-return investments in cutting-edge green tech, the kind of thing you can't just Google." He chuckled, like that was charming. I let him talk, let him spin his web about limited openings and trusted insiders. He even slid the folder toward me. Inside were pages of projections, all in flashy colors but with numbers that didn't add up if you looked too closely. At the back was a contract pre-filled with Casey's name and Dad's signature line. Casey glanced at me nervously. "It's just an investment, Luna. Uncle Steve says it's guaranteed." I took a slow sip of water. "Guaranteed? Like the vacation rentals in Ohio? Or the real estate flip in Nevada?" Steve's smile faltered. "Those were learning experiences." "Right," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. "Because I learned something too. That you've been sued in 3 states, that you drained another girl's college fund 5 years ago, and that you've already set up a bank account for this LLC with only your name on it." Dad's brow furrowed. "Luna." "No, Dad," I cut in, my voice shaking but loud enough to carry. "You need to hear this. He's not here to bring the family together. He's here to take everything from Casey the way he's taken from everyone else." Steve laughed, but it was brittle. "You've been doing some snooping. Cute. But you don't understand." I hit the record button on my phone. "Then explain why Mrs. Dempsey saw you at our house the night I left. Explain why you were getting Casey to sign papers when Dad wasn't home." Casey's eyes darted between us. "Uncle Steve. Is that true?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the folder, but I put my hand on it first. "Not tonight." That's when Maya's backup plan kicked in. From the corner of the restaurant, 2 men in plain clothes stepped forward. Detective Harris from the county sheriff's office and a state investigator Maya's contact had tipped off. "Steve Reynolds," Harris said, flipping open a badge. "We need to talk about some financial activities you've been involved in." Steve tried to stand, muttering about a misunderstanding, but Harris was already sliding the folder into an evidence bag. The state investigator retrieved my phone, checked the recording, and gave me a small nod. Dad looked stunned, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to form words that wouldn't come. Casey's face was pale, her hands clenched in her lap. As they led Steve toward the door, he turned back, his eyes locking on Casey. "Sweetheart, don't let her turn you against me. I'm your family." Casey's voice was barely above a whisper, but it was steady. "She is too." The door closed behind him and the room seemed to exhale. I leaned back in my chair, my pulse still pounding. "Dad," I said quietly. "I told you I was here to listen. I just wasn't listening to him." The restaurant felt strangely quiet after Steve was gone, like the air had shifted. The clinking of glasses and low hum of conversation returned slowly, as if the other diners weren't sure it was safe yet. Dad sat back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "Luna, I don't even know where to start." "Try with, thank you," I said, softer than I expected. My voice was tired, not sharp. Casey was still staring at the empty space Steve had left behind. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear, Luna, I didn't know he was lying." I turned to her. "I believe you. He's good at this. Too good. But you can't just trust someone because they share your blood." She nodded, tears spilling over. He made it sound like we'd finally be a real family again, like things used to be." Dad let out a long breath. I wanted to believe that too. I guess I let that cloud my judgment. He looked at me then, eyes heavy with guilt. "I sided with him and with Casey when I should have been listening to you." For a moment, none of us spoke. The waitress brought the check, but Dad waved her away. "Keep it open. We need dessert." It was his awkward way of saying we're not done here. Over tiramisu and coffee, I told them everything: how Maya and I had tracked Steve's businesses, the lawsuits, the bank account in his name. I even played the recording for Dad, letting him hear Steve admit to past learning experiences in his own words. By the end, Dad's face was set in something harder than guilt. It was resolve. "Tomorrow," he said, "we go to the bank. I'm moving Casey's college fund somewhere safe." Casey gave a small, grateful smile. "And maybe I should stay off Instagram for a while." When we left the restaurant, the night air was cool and damp, the kind that smells faintly of rain. Dad offered to drive me back to Maya's, but I shook my head. "I'll walk. I need some air." Casey surprised me by slipping her arm through mine. "Can I walk with you?" I hesitated, then nodded. We didn't say much, just let the quiet settle between us. Halfway down the block, she spoke. "Remember when we used to get ice cream after my soccer games, even if we lost?" "Yeah," I said, smiling faintly. "Can we do that again sometime?" "Yeah," I repeated, and this time it felt like a promise. By the time we reached Maya's building, I realized something important. Steve had tried to fracture us, to turn our trust into a weapon. But maybe, just maybe, this was the start of putting the pieces back together. And unlike Steve's promises, that was something worth investing in. 2 weeks later, the official letter came. Steve was being formally charged with multiple counts of fraud. The detective told us my recording and the folder from that night had been the nail in the coffin. Dad closed Casey's old joint account and set up a new college fund that only she could access when she turned 18. "This is yours," he told her. "No one touches it, not even me." Casey's smile was small but real. She'd started coming by my room more often, sometimes just to sit and scroll on her phone while I worked on homework. Other times, to actually talk. One Friday night, Dad suggested we cook dinner together, his famous spaghetti sauce, the one Mom used to make. We laughed over burnt garlic bread and too salty pasta, but it felt good. After dinner, Casey grabbed her jacket. "Ice cream?" she asked. I didn't even hesitate. "Yeah." We walked down to the same shop from years ago. The owner still remembered us, still called me the quiet one. Over mint chocolate chip and rocky road, Casey leaned against the table. You know, for a while I thought family just meant who you're related to. But I think I get it now. I smiled. Real family protects you, even if they have to protect you from your own blood. She clinked her spoon against mine in a tiny toast. Guess that makes you the real thing. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was disappearing at all.